Okay, so now it's time to actually write some Go code, and we're going to do that locally. So I've got VS Code open here, and I've just created an empty directory. To create a new project in Go, you use the go mod init command. And don't worry too much about this just yet, just follow along and we'll kind of dive into all of these bits the further we go along. So go mod init and then the name of our package. So we're just going to call this one first program. And that's going to go ahead and create a go mod file in our group. I'm also just going to create a directory called command, as you'll generally see that's what's used in Go programs to kind of contain all of your code. Within our command folder, I'm then going to create a file called main.go. Okay, so you see now we've got a main.go file and a go.mod file. Go mod file is basically for all your package information, dependencies, etc. And then the main file is going to be our actual code itself. One thing I'll say is if you're using VS Code or anything like that, when you're learning a new language, do turn off things like Copilot, because the autocomplete and stuff will kind of trick you into thinking you're learning how the syntax works and all that kind of stuff, when actually it's just making it more difficult for you to learn. So turn off things like Copilot if you're following along. Okay, so in our program, let's first go ahead and define our package here. So I'm going to call this package main, as we need to name the actual package itself. Generally, main is the kind of the main area of your program, and you'll see this very common pattern. We're then going to go ahead and import a couple of packages. So we're going to import the FMT package, which is one we saw before when we were doing the Hello World example. We're also going to import another package called OS, which is for the operating system. And that gives us access to things like command line arguments, which we're going to use in this easy example. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is we're going to define our main function. So in Go, to define a function, you use the func keyword, then the name of the function. You then open up the parentheses, and then you have the curly braces. Now, you'll notice on the main function here, there is no type definition or anything like that. And that's because with the main function, you just don't need them. When we create separate functions, you'll see we do use static typing, but for main, you don't need to do it. Let's go ahead and then just write a simple Go program to print out hello and then whatever you type in when you run the program. So hello Tim, hello James, whatever. We're going to go and introduce an if statement. Again, because Go is such a simple language, this will be quite straightforward and you'll kind of get it straight away. So if, and I'm going to use the len keyword, which checks the length of a list. And we're going to use the OS package that we imported earlier. I'm then going to use a function on that called args. And this is going to give us the length of the arguments that are passed in. So that's going to be the CLI arguments we pass in. Let's just make sure that we've actually got an argument. And if we do, we're going to go ahead and print out hello and then whatever that argument is. So going to use the FMT package here. We're then going to use the print line function. And we're going to pass in hello, comma, and then comma again. We're going to pass in os.args, and then we're going to pass in the first argument. Well, the second argument, but index of 1. So with the os.args, the first argument is the 0 argument is the name of the program itself, and the first one is the actual argument you pass in on the CLI. Let's just have an else condition as well, where we just print a default. So hello world as a standard. Okay, go ahead and save this. So back on over to the terminal. And then to run a Go program, you simply do go, run, and then the path to that main file. So in our case, because it's in the command folder, it's going to be /command, and you run that, and it will then run the program. So it's just go, run, and then the path to the main file. And you see here, we get hello world because we didn't pass in any command line arguments. If we go ahead and pass in a command line argument of Tim, we should see we get hello Tim. And that's it. Fairly simple Go program. Again, let's just run through what we've got here. We've defined our package name, main. We've then got our imports. We've then got the main function itself. and then we've got a simple if-else statement, and then we've got some formatting of the inputs with the os.args and then the index of our first program. And it's pretty simple, right? Okay, so now we've got our simple main program that prints out a hello world or hello and then whatever argument you pass in. A lot of this probably isn't entirely clear, like why we've got package main, how we do imports, how the naming works, etc. But we'll start to discover more of that as we create a new file and our own little package. So go ahead and create a new file, and we're going to call this file greet.go. And it's going to be outside of the command package. And we'll explain all this as we go. So let's go over to our greet.go. And you'll see here that the CLI is kind of giving me some hints there that something's wrong. So the first thing, as we see in our main.go, is we need to define our package name. And in this case, the package is going to be called greet. And it's just going to match the name of our file. It doesn't need to match the name of our file, but it's generally the practice. And in terms of package naming, you'll see in Go that we kind of favor single kind of word names packages like FMT rather than format, OS rather than operating system, just kind of short, quick, easy to understand. So now we've got our package name. Again, we're going to do an import, and we're going to import the FMT package that we've used in a couple of our programs so far. We're then going to go ahead and create a new function. So again, remember the func keyword is what we use to create a new function. We're then going to call this function greet with a capital G. Again, we'll explain why later on. We're then going to open up our parentheses, and this time we're going to pass in some arguments. I'm going to pass in an argument of name, and this is going to have a type of string. So this is our first introduction to static typing in Go. So in Go, you define the argument name and then the type itself. So in our case, name is the argument and string is the type. This function is then going to return a string. So we're going to say string as our return value, and we're going to open up. In this function, we're then going to return, again, fairly straightforward and simple syntax, FMT, again, using that format package, and we're going to do something called sprint f. Open up those parentheses, and you'll see here that VS Code is giving me the type definition of this function and what this function does. So sprintf formats according to a format specifier and returns the resulting string. Again, we'll get into all of that as we go along. But you can also see it takes in a format which is of type string, and it returns a string, which matches the signature of our greet function. So let's do hi, and then we're going to do %s for string, and then we're going to pass in the actual name itself. Okay. Oh, don't need that. Okay, so you can see here that we now have our greet package. You can see it's now not, you can see VS Code is no longer got the file as red. Everything looks correct in terms of our format package. Let's go back over to our main package, and then let's use our greet package that we just wrote. On the imports here, we're going to add in our greet package as well. And you'll see it's underlined as red, but we'll get to that in a bit. Okay, so rather than format.println and then hello and then our arguments like that, let's do greet.greet. So capital G at that point. And then we're just going to pass in the argument that we have from the CLI. We can also do the same thing on the default case here. So greet.greet, and then pass in the string hello if you save that. Okay, so if we go ahead and try and run this command, we'll see what happens. And we get an error. And you can probably kind of start to sense why we're getting this error, right? So VS Code has got this highlighted with a squiggly line saying cannot import greet. No module provides package greet. And if we look at the error we get here, package greet is not in standard. And that basically means it's not in the standard library, so it can't find it. And to fix this, we need to go over to our go.mod file, which basically defines what our package is actually called. You see here, we're calling it first program, as that's what I created it with, but actually we're going to call it greet. So we save that, This should now get rid of the squiggly line, as we can see it did. It's now all green. If we go ahead and run this in the command line, we should see we get hello and then Tim. So that now works. Okay, so we've now, in a separate file, defined a new package called greet. We're importing the FMT function again, sorry, the FMT package again. We've then got our function greet with a capital G. We've got name as a string, and the function returns a string. We're then formatting the string and returning the result of that. In our main.go, we then import that greet package and we use it with greet.greet, and we can pass in the string argument to that function and we get the output. So again, if we run it without a CLI arg, it's just going to print hi, hello world. That's definitely wrong. Maybe we should just do hello world, and that's so we've now got our program running and it's working as we expect. So let's take a few moments to run through some of the stuff that we've done here, and then we're going to go ahead and write some tests for this program, because writing tests is super, super important. So let's start off with some stuff that you're probably wondering about. Right? Why do we have this package main and this main function? What are they all about? Well, in Go, programs are organized into packages. And a package is a collection of source files, generally in the same directory, that are compiled together. And every Go source file begins with a package declaration. We can see here we've got package main. If we go to our greet, we've got package greet. That's our package declaration. And for the main package, which you'll see in pretty much every single Go program that you look at, it's a special package name and a special function. So why do we need the main package? Well, the main package identifies an executable program rather than a library. So Go programs must be run from somewhere, and the main package is the entry point to Go programs. So you'll see that when we do the run command, we're essentially running the main.go file, not the greet.go file. And only executable programs require a main package. So our library doesn't require a main package or a main function because it's not being run itself. It's being run within another package, another file. Right? So why do we need the main function itself, right? Well, the main function is the entry point of our program. This is the thing that Go is actually running. So when you run a Go program, the execution begins at this main function here. And Go automatically calls the function when the program starts. Automatically going to call the main function. And the main function takes no arguments and it returns no value, which is why we don't have any arguments or a return type. Without both the main package and the main function, Go wouldn't know where to start executing our program. And this convention provides a nice, clear, consistent entry point for pretty much all Go applications. So let's take a look at our greet package. So again, we've got our package declaration of greet here, indicating that this file belongs to the greet package. The package name typically matches the directory that it's stored in. We've not done that here, so don't worry about that too much. We'll see that as we go along and forward. We've then got an exported function called greet. And you'll see that I've said this before, but the greet function starts with a capital G. And in Go, that means that it's an exported function. In Go, only identifiers or functions that start with capital letters are accessible outside of the package, right? Okay, so if we go ahead and let's change this to be a lowercase greet. In fact, we'll call it greet with 2 R's, just so it's different from the actual greet function, greet package itself. If we take this over to our main function and then we replace these with greet, I don't know why it's not imported it. Let's just make sure we're importing greet. So you'll see that it's basically not very happy and got errors around greet being undefined, and if we run it we get undefined greet, and that's basically because we no longer got an exported package. We've not got a exported function, Go has realized that basically this package is pointless without the capital G, the exported function. So it's just saying you can't use it and it's not going to import the actual function. So if we go ahead and set these back to be correct, so greet, save it, Go then automatically imports the greet package because it knows it's there, and then it will all work as expected again. Okay, so hopefully that's explained a little bit about these two files, a little bit about packages, naming, exported functions, a bit more about the main function and the main package itself. Again, we'll be diving into this a lot more as we go along. If you don't understand it or haven't followed along so far, don't worry, just stick with it. We'll go over this multiple times and we'll go into more depth, and you'll have way more examples and exercises to see how this all works. We understand a bit more about packages, a bit more about our functions. Let's go ahead and write some tests for our greet package. So go ahead and create a new file called greet_test.go. And that's generally the convention that you'll see in Go. It's _test. In our test file, we again need to follow the convention of always having a package declaration at the top. And in this case, again, it's going to be the greet package because it belongs to the greet. So I'm then going to do an import, and we're going to import something called testing, which hopefully is self-explanatory. We're then going to go ahead and define a function in Go. So again, func keyword. It's going to be a capital, remember, because we're exporting this. And we're going to do test greet. Now, don't worry too much about this particular syntax, but this is basically passing in a pointer to the testing library. Again, we'll cover all this later on, so don't worry too much. This bit here, we'll explain it as we go along. So in Go, generally the way that you write tests is pretty standard. You have a want. So again, don't worry too much about the syntax. We'll explain it as we go along. So this is going to be hello Tim, exclamation mark. And then we've got a dot here. This is going to be greet. And we're going to say Tim. Okay. Don't worry about what this colon equals is. It's just basically assignment. We'll cover this later on. Just stick with it for now. So if our want does not equal our got, we're going to throw an error. We're going to use the T for the testing package itself. And we're going to use a function called error f. And this, equivalent to log f followed by a fail. It takes a string and some arguments. And we're going to say wanted our string got another string. And then we're going to pass in want and okay. Appreciate there's a lot that's gone on here and a lot of it probably doesn't make sense. Don't worry about it. We're going to go through the syntax as and when we go through the course. Just stick with it for now and follow along. Okay, so you see here the VS Code has popped up on the left-hand side as it knows it's a test basically and it wants to run it for us, which is great. But to run this via the command line, we simply need to run go test, and then in our case we're going to have to pass in dot and then dot. Again, don't worry about why we do that. We'll explain that later on. If we run this, we'll see we got a failure, and it said wanted hello on comma Tim exclamation got hi Tim. So I've obviously done this wrong, so let's make it hi Tim, and if we run that command again, you'll see we've passed and it's been successful at that point. Okay, so we've now written a test and we've seen it fail and we've seen it. Before we move on, let's go ahead and update our greet function so that rather than taking a single name, we can pass in multiple names and greet multiple people at once. Again, some of this syntax is not going to be explained in this video, but hopefully it's simple enough that you can kind of get an idea around what it's doing. And then as we go along in the course, it will start to make perfect sense. And you'll see that Go is a very simple language. So let's go to our greet function. And rather than just name, let's call it names, as we'll be passing in multiple names. We then need to update our typing here. So currently it's a single string, whereas what we actually want is a slice of strings. If you've come from Python, it's a list. If you're JavaScript, it's an order. And it's square brackets here. And that shows Go that this is going to be a list of strings. We're still going to be returning a string from this function, so that can stay the same. Let's now do an if check. So let's see if our names slice has any length. If it doesn't have a length, or the length is 0, we're going to go ahead and just default our names. So we're going to set names to equal, again, a slice of strings, and we'll just pass in the default of world. Otherwise, what we're going to do, I can go ahead and delete this, is return a new bit of syntax. So let's go hi, and then we're going to pass in strings. We'll come to that in a second. And we're going to join our names, and we'll join them with a comma, and then we'll end it with a exclamation point. Okay, so now we've updated our greet function to take a slice of strings. We're going to be able to pass in multiple CLI arguments. If we don't have any, we're just going to default to world. We're then going to return a string of hi, and then all of our names joined as a string with a comma. And you'll see that strings here is undefined still. It's got, squiggly line. I've not saved the file yet. So if I go ahead and save the file, Go will do some magic here. It will get rid of our FMT import, as we're no longer using them, and it will replace it with strings. Go is very particular around imports and incorrect syntax. So basically, you can't have a package imported if you're not using that package. But again, we'll see all this as we go along. Okay, so we've updated our greet now to take a slice. And you'll see that both the main and the greet test file are now red. And that's because our function signatures don't match. If we head on over to our main function, we'll see again, we've got these squiggly lines. So we can go ahead and delete all of these as we're no longer going to be using them. Instead, we can just simply fnt print line, and we'll pass in our greet.greet. And this time we're going to pass in again our os.args. And we're going to pass in the first argument, but we're then going to do a colon at the end. So you'll see when we don't have that colon, it's a squiggly line, because this is going to be returning a single string, whereas what we actually want is a slice of strings. And that colon is basically going to select the first and then every single argument after it. So if you've got 0, 1, 2, 3 as a slice, this syntax here is going to select 1, 2, 3. It's going to ignore 0. It's going to select 1, 2, 3. And I believe it also does something nice. If you don't pass anything in, it just gives you an empty slice, which is nice. So if you save that, you'll see that main is now happy. It's no longer red. We can go ahead and run that file, and we get hello world, so no arguments there. Let's pass in Tim. Let's pass in Jess, and we get hello, hi Tim, Jess, as we expect. Now, obviously, our test file is broken, so let's go ahead and fix that. So you'll see here, obviously, greet is now expecting a slice of strings. And we can easily fix this by making this a slice of strings. Again, don't worry about the syntax, just follow along, and it will all make sense as and when we go along. So we've changed this now to be a slice of a string with Tim. And if we run our tests, we should see that this passes now as expected. Okay, so that's great. But with tests, you always want to test more than just one particular thing. Like we've not tested our default case, we've not tested multiple names being passed in. So in Go, there is quite a standard pattern to do this kind of thing that you'll see in a lot of test files, and that's using basically what's called subtests. So we'll define a slice here called subtests. Again, don't worry about the syntax, it will all make sense in the future. In this, we're going to have an items, which is going to be a slice of string, and we're going to have a results type, which will be a string. Okay, I'm going to do this, and within here we are going to have a result, which will be hi Tim. Okay, and you'll see that with Go you often get squiggly lines all over the place and goes very particular about the syntax. So it always expects a comma after slices like that. So we're then going to basically loop through our subtests. So again, this is going to be an introduction to loops. Again, don't worry about syntax. So for underscore blank index, our subtests, so st, we're going to loop through the range of our subtests. In other words, just loop through all of our subtests. This is subtest, it should be subtests. And what we're going to do is say if s, okay, greet st dot items. Again, syntax is going to look a bit dodgy, but just go with it for now. It will all make sense as and when we explore each of the syntaxes. We'll then do our test. Again, we've done this before, the error check here, but we're going to do wanted %s. We're then going to do a new thing, which is %v, which is basically just outputting the error syntax that we'll see, and %s. I'm going to pass in our items, pass in our results, and we'll pass in the actual string itself. Okay, let me just do this. Okay, again, lots happened there, but let's run the test and see if it passes. Okay, so it failed, right? Wanted hi Tim, got hi world. And that makes sense, right? Because we're not actually passing in the items here. So what we actually need to do is pass in our string of Tim, add the comma, save that, run this, and we should get it passing. Okay, so that's now passed, which is great. So we can then go ahead and add another case that's just the default case. So if we don't pass anything in our list, just do that. We get hi, what was it, hi world. That should then run and pass. Excellent. And then we'll do the same with a list of multiple names. So let's do, what was it, Tim, and we'll then do Jess, and we should get Tim. Save that, and we run that, and we pass. Okay, I appreciate that's a lot, and there's lots of new syntax there that probably doesn't make sense at all yet. Okay, as I said before, don't worry about the syntax if you're not familiar with it yet. The important thing here to understand is that ultimately it is kind of all fairly simple. You just need to understand exactly what the syntax is, which we'll cover in later videos. But ultimately, you should be able to understand what's going on in a high level. So ultimately, we're creating kind of a slice of tests. We've got the test case itself and then the expected results. And then we're just looping through those. We're running the function and we're basically checking the result of that function matches our expected result. If it doesn't, we error and the test fails. If it does, it passes and we're absolutely fine. So again, this video, we've done an awful lot, right? So hopefully you followed along, but we've covered creating our own main package, running the greet function, what main does, what the package declarations do. We've created our greet package itself. We now know that when you have a capital letter function in a package, it is an exported function. We've had an introduction to the typing and the function signatures. We've had a brief introduction to the slices, to how we return stuff, how we use packages, and we've got an introduction to tests. Again, awful lot covered in this video, but as we go along in the course, all of this will start to make a lot more sense and it will start to click. So in the next video, we're going to cover the basic types within Go, and you'll start to see all the sort of slices, the strings, all that kind of stuff. So thanks for watching. Hopefully you followed along. Stick with it. Catch you in the next video where you'll be learning all about the basic types.